I first met Major Bob at the Sheraton Hotel in San Salvador in March 1981, in the very foyer where he had had two American trade union advisers assassinated just a few months earlier. Roberto d'Aubusson, a former National Guard intelligence officer in the El Salvadorian army, was a leading light of the country's right wing. He was 42 years old, dapper and militaristic in his bearing. His shirts were always freshly ironed, and strangely blood-free for a man who had so much blood on his hands. "All measures have to be taken to exterminate these communists who threaten my country," he told me. Most of us who reported El Salvador had no doubt that he had given the order to assassinate Archbishop Romero, and may even have been present at the shooting. D'Aubusson had a network of death squads who represented the interests of the oligarchs who still controlled the military. The facts of his involvement were set out a decade later in a UN Truth Commission report. In the meantime, he enjoyed unfettered movement in and out of the US-backed military high command. Within a year of Archbishop Romero's assassination, the US would even welcome his appointment as president of the country's new Constituent Assembly. Such was Washington's desire to see off the communist threat. In those months, the death squads murdered a group of leading academics from the Jesuit University, 4 American nuns, countless teachers, doctors and students, and thousands of peasants. They also killed a number of journalists. On the phone to London, I was promising myself and Madeline that I would soon be home, and that I'd never come back to El Salvador. But there was one key feature of this civil war that few had ever chronicled, and that was life behind rebel lines. The reporter's drug of wanting still more was eating away inside me. I broke my promise. To penetrate the main guerrilla bases, we needed to re-enter El Salvador by the mountainous border with neighboring Honduras, across which vital supplies flowed to the rebels. We flew to the Honduran capital, Tegucigalpa, and then on with the French aid agency Médecins Sans Frontières up to the border with El Salvador. There was only a small fingernail of a moon as we set out from the village just inside Honduras. Our escorts, 7 of them, were evidently well used to picking their way along the rubble-strewn paths of the bumpy terrain that etches the border with El Salvador. The Honduran army was apparently camped out on the hillsides above us, and had been instructed to shoot anyone moving at such an hour. Even so, Sebastian asserted his right to stop endlessly and set up his tripod, load his filters, and feast on the flowers, landscapes, and weather patterns that defined the abiding beauty of Central America. The feature man in him exasperated the anxious newsman in me, but the film we were to make in the ensuing weeks was to be among the most beautiful and forceful I have ever had anything to do with. At 3 a.m, as we came over the crest of yet another hill, we heard rushing water ahead. When we reached the Lempa itself, the river that forms the frontier with El Salvador, it was wide and running at quite a pace. Wearied, we slept for a while among the rocks at the water's edge. We were awakened by our escorts, who were now gesticulating towards the far bank of the river, the darkness punctuated by torchlights amongst the boulders. There was a clank of metal on stone, and then a splash. 10 minutes later, a huge cylindrical zinc water tank emerged out of the darkness, pushed by 5 men stripped to their underpants. Our clothes, the camera, and our escorts' weapons were wrapped in plastic and put inside. We moved upstream with the tank, and then, with all of us clinging to it, we were swept by the current to the other bank. We had arrived in what U.S. Secretary of State Alexander Haig declared on the 18th of May 1981 to be the heart of communist darkness. ITN wanted me to penetrate the Salvadorian guerrilla lines, to put the record straight, that this was no war between rich and poor, but a concerted attempt by Russia to undermine and penetrate America's vital sphere of interest. "Find those Ruskies and Cubans," my editor David Nicholas had telexed, only half jesting from London.